This morning I decided that I'll share a talk with you that I've shared with congregations before, and it was very well received. So, and whenever I talk about this with friends, they always have questions. They always seem interested. So I thought I'd share it with you this morning. I call it There and Back Again. I've died a couple of times. They call them near-death experiences, and it was quite an experience. So I'm here to share that with you this morning. And what happened was, the first time I had a near-death experience, I was 19 years old. I was in college. I was far away. I was up in Idaho, northern Idaho, where both my parents were born and raised, and all my kinfolk, all my aunts and uncles and cousins and grandparents, everybody lived in that same little town, Lewiston, Idaho, a lot like the town of Auburn. And so I was there and going to school, and it was... Oh, let me preface that by telling you that up until that time, during my first 19 years, I knew about death. I found out about death really when I was in high school and my grandfather died. That was the first person who passed that was closest to me, was my grandfather. And that really rippled through my family, through my mother and her sisters and my cousins. And it got me to thinking when I was like, I think a sophomore in high school. It got me thinking about my mortality and about everybody's mortality. And I realized that, well, I have faith. I have faith that I'm going to go to a good place. I was raised in a church-going family. And so that was not a problem for me to worry about being dead. But I always thought that, boy, the transition to get there might be really horrible. It might be really, really tough. It might be really a challenge. And I'm reminded of, you talk about dating yourself, Donald, I'm reminded of one of my favorite quotes from Woody Allen. Woody Allen said, "I'm not afraid of dying, I just don't want to be there when it happens." And that's the way I felt when I was 19. And, well, there I am going to college, and it's about 3 a.m., I don't know, it's really early, really dark, sound asleep, and I choked to death, which was one of my greatest fears. Oh my God, wouldn't it be horrible to choke to death, to suffocate, to drown, to choke to death in a fire or something, not be able to breathe. I had always thought that, well, that'd be absolutely the worst, most terrible thing that could ever happen to a person. And then, fortunately or unfortunately, I choked to death. I was sound asleep, and there was some kind of mucus or something in my throat. And normally, when you're asleep, you just swallow that. You don't even know. You don't even know. You don't wake up or anything. Well, for some reason, it got lodged in the epiglottis, which is that flap between some goes to the lungs and some goes to the stomach, and so that got stuck. And I was sound asleep until I wasn't, and I had exhaled, and I tried to inhale, and there was nothing was coming in. It was completely lodged, and instant panic. I can't breathe. And for not even a second, for a portion of a second, I was in that panic, that terrified mode, and then I popped out. I popped out of my body, and I went up. I was up where the wall meets the ceiling. I'll tell you how common this is in near-death experiences in a moment. I was up there where the wall meets the ceiling. I was looking down at Mark, and there he was in his bed, and he was panicking because I felt nothing. I was out of my body. I felt totally at peace, but I could see Mark there, panicking and struggling, and he was struggling to breathe, and he flipped himself over on his hands and knees, and he was trying to do that dragon power breath with the abdomen, trying to give himself like a Heimlich, to get things going. And while that was happening down there, I'm up over here, as peaceful as can be. And the thing that was most astonishing to me from that experience that I'll never forget is the fact that at that moment, I had no preference. I realized, wow, this could be it. 19 seems kind of young to leave, but this could be it. This might be my dying experience. Or maybe Mark will start breathing again. Maybe I'll come back in and live some more in this form. But the astonishing thing that I'll never forget was the feeling that thy will be done. I was at complete peace with thy will be done. Whichever way, it's just fine with me. So out of body, I didn't have that survival instinct that we have. That, you know, in a time when you're, you know, in the ocean under the wave or whatever your situation, or a near miss in the car, or whatever your situation is, we have all that adrenaline, we have that fight or flight, and we have that survival. It's just, it's you know, it's ingrained in us. It's a part of us as much as breathing, and I didn't have that when I was out of the physical. I call this the earth suit. When I was out of my earth suit, I didn't have that, and that was completely astonishing to me. And I thought, well, gee, as long as I'm up here where the ceiling meets the wall, I looked out the window and there was a tree out there, and you could barely see it in the dark, but there was some house light that you could see on the tree. I thought, well, if I could be here, I could possibly be, before I could finish the thought, I was out there in the tree and I could feel the breeze, and I could look in the window and see Mark. I think Mark, at that point, I think Mark was kind of passed out. I think he was struggling from what he'd just been through. And I thought, well, this is interesting. If I could be here, then I wonder if I could be home, because I was homesick living up there, my first year away from home in the Bay Area. And as soon as I thought, I wonder if I could be home, and then the earth just turned like that underneath me, and there I was at my home, at my mother's apartment where I had lived before I moved to Idaho. And I thought, well, this is exciting. This is a good time for an experiment. And I thought, well, what I need to do is I need to disturb something. I need to knock something over or make something ring or knock or something, so that later on I can call my mom and verify, hey, that was really me. I was really there. Except I didn't have anything, I didn't have a body, I didn't have anything to knock with. I went to the door of the apartment, and I thought, well, I could knock on and then I was on the other side of the door without a body. So I didn't have anything I didn't have hands to make stuff move with, but as you know, I came back into my body and started up again. Started going again. But I was a changed person, as you can well imagine. I would never be the same after that experience. I would never fear death after that experience. And that's quite a thing to have in one's life. So I'm here to tell you, you don't need to fear death. It's nothing bad. The other thing I need to mention to you is when I had before I went on the out-of-body journey, I had the near-death experience about going down that tunnel of light. Everybody talks about it. Everybody's heard about it. I've studied it because I'm curious about it. There have been 2 documentary films where they have interviewed people with near-death experiences, and they all say the same thing. There have been numerous studies where researchers have interviewed people with near-death experiences and got it in their own words, what it was like, what happened next. And it's all the same. Everybody says it in their own language with their own words from their own life experience. But when you hear hundreds of these or read hundreds of these reports of near-death experiences, you can tell they're all talking about the same thing in their own words. They're all talking about the incredible love. Love always comes up. You always feel this incredible love. They always talk about light, the tunnel of light. Mine was kind of like a corridor, didn't have a top. I guess you could call it a tunnel. And as I was moving down, it was like one of those automatic sidewalks at the airport. I was moving along, but I wasn't walking, but I was moving down this corridor of light. And on either side of the corridor of light were beings, were people, were cousins and childhood friends from kindergarten that I don't remember anymore. All of my ancestors were there. They were shoulder to shoulder, these light beings on both sides of this corridor that I'm just kind of floating, walking down the corridor, and all I felt was love. The love had a slightly different flavor. This was the love of a beloved aunt. This was the love of a beloved grandparent. This was the love of a beloved childhood friend. They had a slightly different flavor to them depending on where the love was coming from, but it was all unconditional, infinite love, something that I have never experienced in my earth suit. I've only experienced it at that time, just like everybody else who's been researched that's had this experience. At the end of the tunnel, there was a figure. There was a figure, arms outstretched like this, all in white. Looked to me like Jesus. And I got the message without talking, because we don't have mouths. I got the information very, very clearly that this is not your time. You're going back. This is like a sneak preview of wonderful things to come when it finally is your time. And then I woke up back in my body. My body started breathing a while before I got there, naturally. So that was my first near-death experience, and my first out-of-body experience at the same time. And it's very interesting to read other accounts of other people doing the same thing, and they are so, so similar. The next thing happened to me that was of interest happened to me when I was 63 years old. When I was 63 years old, I had a motorcycle accident, and I shattered this little pinky finger here that's never going to be quite straight again. And I went to the hospital, and they took an x-ray, and they came back out of after they took the x-ray, the two doctors came in to talk to me, and they were both laughing. This is a time for laughter? And they said, the x-ray shows several pieces of bone in there, and we know that from that one angle, when we see several pieces of bone, we know there's several more pieces in there that didn't show up on that particular x-ray. So you're going to surgery to get that reassembled. And wasn't planned, so I had to wait my turn, and the accident happened in the afternoon, so it was about 11 o'clock at night before the OR and the doctor were available, and they took me in, and they reassembled my pinky finger for me, and it was very nice of them. I really appreciate them doing that. And I get to have it today. I can type on a keyboard. I can play the congas and bongo drums, and I can do massage. I love my little pinky finger that was reassembled. I'm so happy about that. What happened was when they finished in the operating room with me, and the anesthesiologist took me off the gas and took all my vitals, and well, he's breathing fine on his own. All his vitals are normal. So it's now 1 o'clock in the morning. So rather than wake me up and ask me who's the president and what day of the week it is, like sometimes they do when you come out of anesthesia, they just decided to let him sleep it off. That would be the best thing for him. So they rolled me into a ward with other beds and to sleep it off. Well, sometime after that, I stopped breathing. They call it respiratory arrest. And I stopped breathing, and this time it was quick. This time I went through the corridor of light, and I went through the tunnel and the greeting and all that stuff instantaneously, and I found myself in the afterlife. And there are many teachers who will describe for you the experience of the afterlife that's going to happen. The Buddhists have the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and it'll describe for you what happens an hour after you die, and 6 hours after you die, and 12 hours after you die, and it's very detailed, very informative. There are other wisdom teachings, like Meister Eckhart will tell you exactly what happens when you die and in what sequence. And there are other teachings from other cultures and other religious groups. There's a word that I just blanked on. And they differ. They're not the same. They differ from one another. And I'm not here to argue any of that. I'm not here to disagree with any of those wonderful teachings. I've read as many as I could find, and I love having that information. My experience is different. So I'm not here to say anybody else is incorrect or anything like that. I'm just here to share my firsthand experience. So this second time, I was really there. This second time, I found myself a light being amongst other light beings. The light beings were, you could see that there was, like head and shoulders. There was a form to the light being, but that's about all you could see. Everything was radiant. We were in a place that was radiant with light, and all the beings were radiant with light. Nobody was brighter than the other or taller than the other. It was, the words are inadequate. To say that it was blissful, to say that it was ecstatic, to say that our vocabulary is inadequate to describe how sweet it is, how exquisite it is. You can't experience it in the Earth suit. How wonderful and how awesome it is. And I know, for me, I absolutely know that we all have that to look forward to. I was with a group of light beings, and we were in a circle, and we were blessing a planet. I think it was Earth, didn't have a little name tag on it, but I think it was Earth, this beautiful planet, and that we were all, my group of light beings, we were all blessing, and it was so good. We were blessing the planet herself. We were blessing all of the living things in the oceans, the flyers, the ones that crawl, the ones that walk on 2 legs and 4 legs. That was our job, if you want to call it that. We were blessing these light beings, of which I was part of that team. We were blessing this planet, and it felt so incredibly good just to be there, and it felt so incredibly good to be a channel of all of this love and all of this healing and all of this well-being. It was good and very good. And in the far, far distance, I heard that I was being called, and I instantly knew that I was being called back here. And my first thought was, oh no, do I have to go back there? This is so good. But as the universe functions, thy will be done. Turns out it's a big deal, and it's everywhere. And so, thy will be done. So I followed that silver thread, if you want to call it that. That's just what it felt like. And I came back into this Earth suit. When I got back into my Earth suit, I was lying on a gurney, and there were 3 people grabbed onto the gurney, and they were racing down the hall of a hospital. I could see the ceiling lights going over like this because I was laying there on my back on the gurney. And unfortunately, I'll go ahead and say that, unfortunately, I was still open. And in that open state, I was one with everything around me. I was one with the mind of all 3 people pushing this gurney, jogging down the hall. Now, one of the people was a mature male person. I would say the physician on duty, probably. And what he was going through was, we're not going to lose one on my watch. We're not going to we're not going to have those statistics. I'm going to save this guy. I'm going to resuscitate this guy. I can't lose one. That's where he was coming from. And there was another mature female individual, and I'm guessing she was probably an RN, and where she was at was, I'm doing the right thing, in the right order, in the right sequence, by the book. She knew her business, she knew exactly what to do, and she was doing it in the proper sequence. The third person on the gurney shouldn't have been there. The third person had this little kind of candy stripe young female. Oh my God, this guy is dying. I want to see somebody die. She was not a happy camper. And I really felt compassion for this one, poor thing. And they finally got me to another kind of table. They bumped this up against that. And I knew, because I was in all their heads at the same time, I knew that they wanted to transfer me over to that other one. And so when they started to move me, I used my leg and my arm that were downside, to help transfer myself. And the little voice down by my feet screamed and said, oh my God, he's helping, he's alive, he's moving. She was so relieved. And I was so relieved for her. So here I am. Later on that day, before I got discharged, the nurse came in to talk to me, the nurse that found me. And she said, it was about 7:30 in the morning, and I was doing a bed check before I signed on for the ward to be responsible for everything. And when I came to your bed, you were kind of like a cross between Smurf Blue and Barney Purple. You were, I knew you weren't breathing. It was obvious. So she hit the panic button for code blue. I thought they had code red and code green, and it turns out not so. It turns out code blue means somebody's not breathing. Get here immediately. So they did that. And I remember somebody slamming something over my face, and they call it bagging you when they're getting you going. And it didn't break my nose, but it bloodied my nose. They were real serious about getting me started again. And then we went down the hall. And the rest, as you know, is history. It was a unique experience, to say the least. And after I've had this experience, and after I've listened to all of those accounts written, and in the two movies, by the way, old now, back in the 80s, one movie was called Life After Life, and the other movie was called Life After Life. Not to be confused. Two totally different groups of people did the research and came out with those two movies with the same title. So they are documentary. They're not entertainment. They're documentary films about people telling their stories, just like the one that I just told you. And to me, it's heartwarming that the stories are so similar. My belief that I come away with is that God is so good. Spirit, sweet, infinite love is so good that pretty much whatever a person expects, that's what they're going to see at their time. I believe that if a person believes in purgatory, or if a person believes in the Great Spirit, or if a person believes in whatever, all the different beliefs there are with billions of people, I believe that the universe is so kind and so loving that at your time, that's what you're first going to see. That's exactly what it's going to feel like. It's going to be familiar to you. It's going to be comforting. It's going to be good and very good. So I'll leave you with this thought. There's nothing to fear about dying. And there's nothing to fear about going through the process of getting there. And if there's nothing to fear about dying, and if there's nothing to fear about being dead, what is there to be nervous about or concerned about? Nothing. Enjoy your life. Bless you. Amen. Much fun. It's time for our meditation. So if you will join with me, perhaps you'd like to uncross arms and legs. Perhaps you'd like to take a deep breath. Exhale completely. Exhale long, slow, complete exhalation. As we bring ourselves into a place of relaxation, a place of peace, allowing the chair to support you completely. As you relax into this moment, this beautiful moment called now, this precious moment called now. In this moment, all is well. In this moment, all is safe. In this moment, there is nothing to fear. In this moment, it is easy for us to hear and listen to our divine guidance, to know that we are never alone. We can never be abandoned. The Spirit of God, the Spirit of love, is everywhere, always. Thank you, sweet Spirit, for giving me the guidance to do today what is mine to do. To do it with love, to do it with compassion, to do it with joy, to be happy in who I am, right here, right now. Thank you for helping me to always remember, no matter what the question, love is the answer. And so we go from this place to the rest of our day, to the rest of our week, taking with us this love, taking with us this kindness, this compassion that we can share with others everywhere we go, with everyone we meet. For this and all of our blessings, many more than I could ever say, we say thank you, God. Amen.